my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm going to cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. This episode is in partnership with Motif Medical. Motif designs insurance-eligible products for busy moms. With a focus on innovation and empowerment, Motif's line of breast pumps and maternity compression garments are sophisticated yet discreet and made to support mothers as they navigate new motherhood. Discover why moms are reporting more milk in less time with the Luna breast pump and see how you can get it covered through insurance at motifmedical.com/birthhour. You'll also see their other products there like the Aura Glow, which is their new wearable pump that I discussed at the end of this episode with lactation consultant Jackie. We talk about what makes this wearable unique and how it compares to the Luna, and it's really just a great conversation, so be sure to listen to that at the end of this episode. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another great way to support the Birth Hour and get more involved in the community is to join our Patreon. You can do this by going to patreon.com/birthhour, and you pledge $5 or more a month, and you get perks like access to our archived episodes. We have over 800 episodes in the archives now that are not available in the main podcast feed. You also get access to our private Facebook group, which is a great place to find support and community, as well as searching the archives there. There's been so many great discussions, and you can just pop a question into the search bar and you'll find some great answers to things that have already been asked. The last thing that we offer to our Patreon members is monthly Zoom calls, which is a really great, intimate way to connect with other Birth Hour listeners and me each month. Your support means so much to me. There's a few different ways to do it. You can do a gift membership, send that link to someone who needs a gift idea for you, or you can do an annual membership, which basically gets you like 2 months free. This support means so much to me and really, truly keeps the lights on here at the Birth Hour, because with more podcast networks emerging, it's becoming a little more challenging as an independent podcaster to keep things going. So our Patreon supporters are a huge part of that, and I'm really grateful to each and every one of you. So again, you can go to patreon.com/birthhour to get started with that. Today's birth story guest is Kanaya, and she is going to share briefly her first and second birth and then focus more on her most recent birth, which was a home birth. All right, let's hear from Kanaya. Hi, Kanaya. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Will you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, so I am based out of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, specifically Arlington. I am a mom of 3 now, and me and my husband both reside here. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I always like to plug Atlanta, but Arlington has been our home for the last 3.5 years now.
Okay. All right. And then you mentioned you have 3 kids. I know you want to kind of touch a little bit on each story today, but what's going to be our main focus today?
Yeah. So today I just want to kind of talk about my experience with home birth, and then also just chat through the beauty of midwifery, the beauty of working with a midwife multiple times, and then just also the flexibility around the support that you receive from that midwife just as you experience ebbs and flows in your own life.
All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with, do you want to go ahead and start with your first birth and just kind of the decisions you made around that? And then that'll lead us into the home births.
Yeah. So my first birth was back in 2020. It was a hospital birth back in Atlanta, Georgia. Just a general overview about that story. I really, prior to deciding on an OBGYN, I felt like, man, I really do want to look into a midwife. But really the fear of the unknown kind of caused me to not really go that route, especially as a first-time mom, like not knowing what to expect with birth and just trying to navigate that whole scenario was pretty interesting. Of course, also back then we were experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, and I just decided, let me stick with the OBGYN that I had chosen. So I ended up giving birth in the hospital. It was a great birth. Funny story is, I kind of wasn't really knowing what to expect as labor progressed. And then early on a Monday morning, I'm like, man, this is really painful, just really having a hard time with the contractions. And my husband and I decided, okay, let's go to the hospital. Turns out when we got there, I was already 6 centimeters dilated. So things moved pretty quickly. And I guess sort of about the third hour there was a recommendation from the OB to just, okay, you're doing really well. Why don't we break the water? I kind of felt a little bit hesitant about that just because, I had done my own research and I thought, okay, let's have as few interventions as possible. But I think the affirmation of you're doing so well, I said, you know what? Okay, let's do it. Unfortunately, after getting my water broken, everything sort of came to a halt. And so that led to me needing to have an epidural and get Pitocin and things like that. So that was just the overview of my first birth experience.
Okay. And then I'm sure we'll refer back to that at some point, but do you want to talk about then your decision to have a midwife for the next birth and a home birth? And then also, I'm assuming this one was in Texas, or were you still in Atlanta?
Yeah. So my second birth was actually in Texas. It was a home birth. Once I found out I was expecting my second, I was really excited, but also kind of feeling a little bit sad that I wasn't in my hometown and could rely on my friends to choose a midwife. So one of my friends was like, hey, just do an Instagram search or do a Google search. And I came across Swiss Avenue Birth here in Dallas. Shout out to them. And it was a great birth experience. So I guess a little bit different to my first birth experience was just the quality of care was stellar. I think from a nutrition standpoint, number one, I just loved how there was a really huge focus on getting the right nutrition, making sure, you're taking your probiotics, making sure you are taking all of your supplements and vitamins. So that was really a great experience for me. The first time around, I did have beta strep.
The group B strep.
Yes, I did have that the first time. So just getting that recommendation from the midwives to really prioritize probiotics was so critical for me. I will say though, considering the first birth and the second birth, I was honestly really nervous about a home birth because I just didn't know what to expect. I had experienced some of those early labor pains the first time, but after everything stalled and I needed an epidural, I didn't really know truly what that active labor felt like. So I was a little bit nervous. But the midwifery team was just really incredible with supporting you throughout the whole process, which was great. And my third home birth, so I did work with the same midwife. She recently started her own practice. And so I worked with her the third time around. And I had a little bit of a better idea of what that active labor would feel like and, sort of what my body could handle. So once I found out I was expecting my third, I immediately knew, okay, yeah, I'm hiring a midwife. Like that was a no-brainer for me at that point. But I will say life did look a little bit different the second time around and the third time around, really. So the first time around, I was close to my immediate family back home in Atlanta. The second time around with a home birth, or the first home birth rather, second birth, we were in a larger space. We were renting a house. And the third time around, we'd actually downsized to an apartment to prioritize some other goals. So life did look a little bit different comparing all three births. But I think working with the same midwife was like really crucial in just the comfort. I think birth is such an intimate experience. And so I really felt very grateful to be able to work with the same midwife again this third time around. The funny thing about the third birth is throughout that pregnancy, I had feelings of like, oh my gosh, this looks different, or this feels like I'm getting towards labor. Like towards the end, there was many of those experiences where your body sort of reminds you of what you remember in previous births. But they always say the third baby is sort of like the wild card, and that you might be feeling sensations that are similar to what you've experienced in the past when really it's not true, I guess. So I had like lots of instances where I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling really low. Like, could this be that I'm getting towards the end? Or like, is the baby going to come early? Like all those circumstances where you just sort of don't know if what you're feeling is true.
Right. Just like questioning every little twinge.
Yeah, that was honestly really different for me the third time around because my other two pregnancies were very predictable. And I will say my midwife, Brittany, was really great with kind of helping me, I guess, maintain a positive mindset in the sense of like not getting so anxious. Because sometimes when you're towards the end, you're like, okay, baby can come. But then if it's not really quite there yet, sometimes you sort of start to get anxious. And she really helped me through those times of like not really knowing what's going on. So that was great. But I think the third time around, what I remember about the start of labor itself was just being woken up in the middle of the night with like a very sharp pain. And it was a really interesting thing because not many things wake me up out of my sleep, but that was like very sharp. And I'm like, that's interesting.
Was it sharp like in the front, like a cramp or a contraction or something different?
It was like a sharp, because I can't say it was a contraction, but it was like maybe a cramp, like that tightening.
Okay.
It was like a sharp tightening, which like I just shot up out of my bed, like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah.
And little did I know, like that was sort of the beginning of labor for me that third time around. But I honestly pushed it out of my mind, like, okay, that's nothing. I kept telling myself, until you're in pain, everything is nothing. Because I had so many instances where I'm like, what is this? What is that? And I was kind of driving myself a little bit crazy. But I really knew that this third time I'm in labor because I'm just going about my day on a meeting. And it's funny because the contractions like started to pick up like really heavily. And I'm like, oh man, I'm on a meeting and these are contractions. Like, I think that was the moment where I knew, oh, wow, this is a contraction. Like on a meeting, having to breathe through the sensations. I'm like, okay, I'm in labor. So that was really funny the third time around. So I think like once I'm realizing that, okay, this is active labor, things are moving pretty quickly. After that meeting, I said, okay, gotta sort of shut down my day and like prepare for birth. And it was really interesting the third time around because I guess a blessing and a curse maybe that I kept always dismissing everything I was noticing because it could very well be like, this is not birth yet, So I kept dismissing things, but that was also probably a blessing because when I felt like, oh gosh, yeah, this is definitely a contraction, I knew immediately, okay, shut down my schedule, just kind of prepare for birth. And it was a lot different, of course, the third time because I have two younger children and our space is a little bit smaller and just kind of going with the flow. And I just remember reaching out to my midwife and just saying, hey, it's picking up and I think this is active labor. And just remember like being in my kitchen, hovering over the kitchen counter, just managing the ebbs and flows of the birth. And, she mentioned, okay, I'm on my way. And things picked up pretty quickly from there. I didn't have a water birth or anything, but like the labor actively kept progressing. The difference between the third time around was it was fast and slow all at the same time, which is so weird as I reflect on it. My second birth, which was my first home birth, everything kind of picked up really quickly. And I remember the stage between active labor and pushing and my son coming out was like the span of an hour.
So fast.
I know, it was really, really a fast birth. And once I realized it was an active labor the third time, I kind of got scared because I'm like, is it going to be as fast as the last time? Could it be faster? Is it going to be slower? I kind of didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, it's always a concern when you have a really fast birth that the next one's going to be like, just drops out of you completely not ready.
Yeah, it was weird because the third time around, like once I knew, okay, this is active labor, things progressed pretty quickly. Like I remember letting my midwife know, okay, this is it. She got there maybe an hour later. By that time, we're getting really low. It's really feeling very active. And I was having those flashbacks of the previous birth, like, could the baby be born in the next hour? But it took maybe another 3 hours. But the interesting part about it was it all progressed very steadily, but it felt fast and of course felt slow at the same time, just considering the other birth. But just overall, like the support of the midwife, having that familiar face with you as you birth, familiar midwife, familiar birth assistant. I think that was really critical for me, just considering how different, just how like people say the third baby is a little bit of a wild card. Like I think towards the end, I really needed that mental support. Like I mentioned earlier, like sometimes you can sort of psych yourself out considering like, is this happening or is that happening? And trying to rush things along. I think I really needed that mental support to just say, hey, it's okay. Just relax. Don't put too much pressure on yourself about what's going to happen next. Just kind of be in the moment. And I really, like, as I reflect on that now, that was really, really valuable for me.
That's awesome to have cohesiveness between births. And it sounds like, it was one of those where you're just like really excited that you're pregnant again because you get to call the same midwife and have the same support team.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really, really, really cool to have the same support team and just kind of just the friendships and the relationships that you build with them over time. It also felt really nice that third time around to have built those meaningful relationships with my midwife and my birth assistant. And remembering the second time around, how when I found out I was pregnant with my second, kind of feeling that sadness of, oh, I'm kind of a little far from home. I don't know which midwife to call. And then reminiscing on the third time around, knowing I know exactly who to call. I know that I will be supported. I know that I will feel confident in the process. That was a really great 180 for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, let's take it back to, speaking of calling, let's take it back to when you decided to call the midwife as far as, things felt like they were moving quickly.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. That morning when I had that sort of really sharp pain, it's funny because she and I, we would have our monthly visits. This time it was, every 2 weeks we would have our visits and we would just sit and chat about kind of how you're feeling, what's going on, anything you want to talk about. I love those midwifery sessions towards the end when you kind of can just sit and chat. But the last time we met, she was actually telling me her story about how her third birth, she had that really big sharp pain that woke her up out of her sleep. And so I remember it was 4 a.m. and I had that really sharp pain. And I'm like, wow, what is that? And then I immediately thought about her and her story. And so I messaged her, hey, I had a sharp pain, but it's nothing.
So typical. I wonder how many midwives have gotten that text.
I know. And just sort of went about my day. And then, as I'm on that meeting and I'm really having to like breathe through the contractions, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it. And when I called her that evening, I just remember like being in my kitchen, sort of hovered over the counter, breathing through the contractions. And I remember the moment when she and the birth assistant walked into the room, I just burst into tears because I was so grateful for their presence, grateful for just the quality of care that you get when working with a midwife, and just the relational support that you have as you birth. Just remember like seeing them and just bursting into tears with like gratitude and just reminiscing again, like I mentioned, on that time when I didn't know who I would be able to call, and having them be a part of my team and being able to call them and see them there was just incredible.
That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and talk about kind of how labor progressed. And I'm like so curious now how long the whole thing lasted as well.
Yeah, so I guess like timeline for like the active labor stage, I think I texted the midwife, it was around like 6 p.m. I think she got there around 7. Our birth assistant got there at around 8. I was still sort of kind of just trying to manage the contractions. For me, I have to like lean onto something. And it's funny, each birth I've always leaned on the kitchen counter. So I think at that point, 7 p.m., when the birth assistant got there, we were like, okay, things are picking up. And we moved from the kitchen counter to the shower. And throughout all my other births, well, besides the first one, the shower had always been that place where I know, okay, once we move to the shower, we're getting close. And it's really funny because I'm such a type A personality where I'm always looking for the patterns and the clues of what's going to happen next. I'm probably like not the person that likes surprises. So I think, again, that's another reason why that emotional support from the midwife was so really helpful for me, because I am that person that looks for clues and patterns of what's going to happen next. And birth is just not like that. It's different every time. And I think because this third time was so different, I really struggled with like, where are my clues? Where are my patterns? Like, what do I expect? So I'd say like 7:30, we went to the shower. Birth was definitely picking up. We're getting really, really low. Everything else from there is sort of a blur. I remember being in the shower for quite a while and thinking about my second birth. We were in the shower for maybe 45 minutes, and I really had that urge to push. And this time around, we were in the shower for about an hour, and I still wasn't having that urge to push, but the contractions were really picking up. And I don't remember that urge to push until around, it felt like it was probably like an hour and a half before the baby actually arrived. So like between 8 until 10:45, it was just contractions. And that was also kind of hard because the contractions were really quite rough, but I wasn't at all feeling like I need to bear down and push. So I think that part again was where just the emotional support of the midwife. Of course, my husband was there and I'm hanging on to him as I'm trying to manage the contractions. But really between like 8 p.m. and 10:45, it was just laboring. And I'd say probably at like 11 p.m., maybe 11:15, I started feeling, okay, that sensation of feeling like you have to poop. So I started feeling that sensation a lot more. And the baby was born towards midnight. But I remember this third time around, that ring of fire that everyone sort of talks about I felt it a lot more the third time. than I did the second time.
Interesting.
Yeah. The second time of course, I was eating my dates very, very regularly, and have always eaten dates for all 3 pregnancies to sort of help with the ripening of the cervix as the time gets near. But that ring of fire the third time, that was something to remember.
I feel like it was kind of the same for me with my third. Like my second was just it was just the easiest by far. And the third, I feel like enough time had gone by that I was like, I had kind of forgotten how much it hurts. And I was like, oh my gosh, this hurts so badly. I do not want to ever do this again.
I know. I think that was me too, because the second time around, it was so fast. It hurt, but I didn't feel that much. But the third time around, like I said, that labor just from the shower to actual pushing just felt a lot longer, and I was a lot more tired. And yeah, I just remember we got to the stage where they're like, okay, you can push. And I remember pushing, and I'm like, okay, that's the baby's head. They're like, yep, keep going, and pushed more. And the baby's head was crowning. And I just remember like, okay, I can push, but like that final stage. And then as you try to push the shoulders out, I'm like, whoa, I can't do this. That pain was like very, very new for me. And I just remember having to like pause and really get my mental state together again. I guess throughout this story, there have been the mental affirmations of the midwife have like really been a key part for me this third time around. But yeah, just like struggling, just being tired from labor and struggling with that final push and like feeling that sensation of pushing and the pain surrounding that, just like really needed that final support towards the end to like get the baby out.
Yeah, it sounds like you had the support, so that's amazing. And then once baby did come out, how was the immediate recovery and meeting baby? And then we can talk about longer term postpartum as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, it was really awesome. Just remember like baby coming out and of course the overwhelming feeling of relief. But just like being surrounded with everyone and the support of everyone. And of course, like being in our home, in our space was really great. Yeah, we did like the newborn exam. Everything looked good. Baby's cry was nice and strong. So that was great. And postpartum, the third time around, there's a lot more work to do. I'd say physically, with pelvic floor health and just strengthening pelvic floor. I was able to latch the baby immediately, and that was great. I guess the immediate postpartum was great. Baby was progressing really well. But at the 6-week mark, everyone in our household got RSV. So,
oh no.
Yeah, that meant that we were in the hospital. We were in the PICU for about 2.5 weeks.
So scary.
Yeah, the RSV really affected her really bad. So she had to be intubated and just monitored really closely. But again, just the support of the midwife, just like, checking in on us, double checking how we're doing, clarifying like what to do with breastfeeding when you can't breastfeed ad lib for a time being. And, just helping me navigate just those sort of difficult 2 weeks. We're all doing much better now. But that was an interesting postpartum experience for me. Well, for her, because she was, really struggling with that virus.
Yeah.
But also, just for me, also just 6 weeks, wasn't really able to focus on the pelvic floor health as immediately as I wanted to. But of course, just like the support and like working through what my breastfeeding journey would look like as we're trying to get her well and better. Luckily, once she was discharged from the hospital, we didn't have any other challenges with breastfeeding. So we're still exclusively breastfeeding, and that has been going very well. But yeah, just the constant support has been incredible.
That's good. Yeah, I feel like RSV is so scary. And yeah, just getting through that is hard. And of course, when you're trying to heal as well, it's not really like the right setup for you to be healing. And then I feel like also when you have a home birth and then you get thrust into like the hospital setting postpartum, it can be kind of jarring. And you're just not prepared at all for that. Not that anyone is ever prepared for their baby to get sick, but yeah, I'm glad your midwives were still able to support you through that as well.
Yeah, so grateful for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad everybody's doing well now and breastfeeding's going well and everything. Anything else you want to share from your story, or do you want to go ahead and talk about resources?
I guess just as like a final, summary, I just want to encourage that first time mom out there who's thinking about midwifery care to go for it. If you feel like it would be a great option for you, to go ahead and go for it and do sort of what my friend recommended for me and just do an Instagram search and kind of see what midwives are in your area and I guess whose content you really like. But then also just want to highlight the beauty of support during these birth experiences. Of course, your partner is an incredible support, and most often you can't birth without them. But I think also just that support from a midwife or even a doula to just help you navigate the different scenarios is just so incredibly valuable. Not even just as you birth, but as you navigate pregnancy, as you give birth, as you navigate postpartum, just like the support and the quality of care from midwives is just incredible. So I just really encourage any new mom or soon to be mom who is, I guess, considering what all is out there for them, to take a look at the midwifery model of care. And I think a question that I hear most often from other moms, because I tell anyone who will listen to get a midwife, is just curious, like most of them are wondering, what is the cost? And, is it something I can afford? I just encourage you again to check out any midwives in your area. They usually do have very reasonable payment options. And I just think it's a great option for any mom who's considering it, mom or dad.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's frustrating that insurance doesn't just cover it because it often costs them a lot less.
Yeah.
But there usually is like a way to get some kind of out of network reimbursement, or like you said, midwives will be willing to work with people for payment plans and things like that. So I also think like sometimes people are spending so much on a doula, which doulas work really hard and I think they deserve what they charge and everything, but a midwife is getting like to be not that far off from the cost of a doula in some cities. And I never needed a doula with my home births because the midwife had assistance and things like that. So yeah, definitely worth asking around. Like you said, the local people are going to be really good resources for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think just a side note, of course, if you prefer a hospital setting, I think definitely go with what you prefer.
Yeah.
I just honestly found that midwifery turned out to be a lot cheaper for us because I think like after the deductible and any other expenses that come after birth, it just always turned out to be cheaper. So I like to highlight that for people as well.
Yeah, it is crazy like what the deductible is or what the coinsurance is. I think just having my appendix out this year with insurance, I paid what I would have paid a midwife for a home birth. So yeah, and births really rack up in that area as well, especially if you end up with a lot of interventions. So
definitely
something to keep in mind. Unfortunately, it's all kind of crazy in this country, but yeah, thanks for sharing that aspect.
Yeah.
All right, any specific resources you want to talk about here at the end? And then also the best way for people to connect with you.
Yeah, so I just want to highlight just the midwives and midwifery teams I have worked with. So I wanted to shout out Brittany from Naissance Midwifery if you are in the DFW area. Also want to shout out Swiss Avenue Birth. Also, if you're in the DFW area and you're looking for midwifery care, I would check them out. I'll also just chat about me. I run a bookkeeping business that supports female entrepreneurs. And I have a very special love for midwives and doulas. So happy to connect with anyone via Instagram. My Instagram handle is laudwar.bookkeeping. And yeah, I just so happy to chat today with you and share my story.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got to talk, and I appreciate you sharing your experience. And we will link to all of those things on your show notes page so people can find you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now I'm going to talk with Jackie from Motif Medical about their awesome wearable pump. Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining me to chat about the Motif breast pump line.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited. We have some exciting things coming.
Awesome. Well, before we get into all of that, will you tell listeners just a little bit about you and what you do at Motif Medical?
Yes, so I am a registered nurse and board certified lactation consultant, and I have the pleasure of being the clinical lactation advisor or clinical lactation specialist with Motif, which just means I get to play around with all the fun breast pumps and tell them all the things that might make the pumps and the products better for breastfeeding families, and I absolutely love it. I also work in private practice, so I still and very much, boots on the ground, helping families in their own homes right after birth or anytime in the postpartum period and the prenatal period, just helping families be more prepared for a breastfeeding journey and all the things that they might encounter.
Very cool. Well, I was lucky enough to get to use the Luna breast pump when it was pretty new. I guess 6 years ago now. My youngest just turned 6. And I talk about all the time how it was my favorite pump of all the ones I had tried over 3 kids and everything. And then you guys came out with the hands-free pump a couple years ago. And now there's something new on the horizon. So I want to talk about the new pump that's coming out this year.
Yes, we are very excited. Just after the first of the year, we are launching the Aura Glow, which is a new wearable pump. You might remember the Aura as our original wearable pump, and it's still available, but we've got a new player on deck that I think is going to provide a lot of really sought after features, a lot of great pump quality, and something that moms I think are going to be really excited to use on a pretty regular basis as they're going back to work or just going about their lives where they need to be hands free, need to have that wearable pump option.
Very cool. So I know you guys kind of take a lot of, I don't know, advice isn't the right word, but you take feedback. There we go. You take feedback from customers and what people are liking about pumps and things like that. So what are some of the differences with the Aura Glow that we can expect to see?
Yes, love this question because this is why I love working with Motif. That
Yeah.
they are so particular about taking feedback from the professional community, from the families who are using their products, and they're not just looking to pump out products that sell.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a business. We need to sell things to stay in business, but the idea is to make products that actually meet needs and make pumping easier for people so that they naturally just want to buy the products, which I love that idea. And I love that we've built the Aura Glow based on feedback. So the thing I'm most excited about is the expanded flange sizing. So you get 5 flange sizes right in the box. So you get the 24 millimeter breast shield, but we also include 15 millimeter, 17 millimeter, 19 millimeter, and 21 millimeter inserts so that right out of the box, most people are going to be able to find something that allows them to pump efficiently, effectively, and comfortably. And then if those sizes don't work, the 15 through 24 that come in the box don't work, we also have even smaller sizes, 11, 12, 13, and 14 millimeter inserts available, and then a 27 millimeter breast shield available for those that might need a larger size. So excited about that. The other things that I think set this pump apart, it's a powerful wearable. So the suction is 260 to 280 mmHg. So that's millimeters of mercury. That's how we measure that suction pressure. And that puts it on par with the suction of pumps like Luna. It's still a wearable, still something that we're going to classify as a secondary pump that we would use to complement the Luna, but it's powerful. And it has 2 pre-programmed pumping modes, which are just, I think, something that's going to make life so much easier and take a lot of the guesswork out of, what settings do I use? How do I set my pump to get the most out of it?
Yeah, the different sizing is huge. I know I tried a wearable pump with my last baby, and it was, it was very early on in the making of these, but it just that did not work for me and was not
Mm.
comfortable. So having those different sizes is amazing. And do you guys provide some kind of guidance in, the packaging, or can people reach out to help find the right size?
We do provide guidance in the packaging that's all been updated to
Mm.
match the most current information we have about flange sizing. So, as I said, Motif is huge on listening to that feedback, and lactation consultants have been screaming about flange sizing for a while now. And Motif definitely has listened by including those smaller sizes and that flange sizing guidance that does fit the most current information that we have about getting the right size.
Amazing. So you also mentioned the programming modes for pumping. Can you explain a little bit about those and what's different with the Aura Glow?
Yes, so I think this is revolutionary. I love this idea. There are 2 pre programmed pumping sessions. There is the cluster feeding mode and the general pumping mode. And you can still use the pump, just as you normally would use a breast pump. But the cluster feeding mode has these 5 levels of pumping and then pause, pumping and pause to mimic how a baby cluster feeds. So that can help increase milk supply. And
Mm.
without the need to do this like big long power pumping, hour long power pumping session. It's this 30-minute pre-programmed session that your pump will move through all by itself. And then the general pumping mode is just a way to maximize your pumping efforts a little bit by triggering a couple of letdowns. So it goes through massage mode and it stays there for 2 minutes to help trigger that letdown. Then it goes to expression mode and you get that, longer, more rhythmic, kind of mimicking how the baby suckles once your milk has let down. And then it will go back to the massage mode automatically to trigger that second letdown and then go back to expression. So it repeats the massage, expression without you even having to think about it. And that way you can get a little bit more out of the time you're spending pumping.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't think I've heard of that before on a pump. And I'm just like sitting here, like picturing a nursing session with baby, and like they kind of fall asleep. And then they're like, oh, wait, I want some more. And they wake up, and then you have another letdown. And I could see that being something that you would really benefit from as far as milk supply with a pump that could do that as well.
Yes, exactly. Just trying to take advantage of all those hormone fluctuations and all the ways that our babies know exactly how to influence our milk supply. We're just trying to mimic that with the pump setting.
Awesome. Okay, so then you mentioned that, you do classify it as a secondary pump. What kind of guidance would you give people that are trying to decide, what pump is right for them, based on whether they're pumping full time or using it occasionally, or, lifestyle, things like that? Do you, especially in your work in private practice, I'm sure you see a lot of people wondering what they should get.
Oh, yes. I get this question a lot. And the truth is, when we do anything other than traditional flanges and that high quality double electric pump, like the Motif Luna, anything that doesn't have those traditional flanges and that powerful motor is really considered a secondary pump. Now, does that mean it's not going to work or it's not going to be effective? It's not going to have its place? Of course not. We know lots of people are using wearable and portable pumps, and many of them, are very successful at building and maintaining milk supply. But for most people, we want to rely on something that's a primary pump like the Luna to build and maintain a milk supply, and then use something like a wearable or portable pump. So a wearable like the Aura Glow as that secondary option that we're using when we just can't drag out the big pump and the traditional flanges. So I have 4 kids. I could very easily see myself needing a wearable pump to be able to keep up with my other children if I were to have another baby. And that would be a perfect scenario to use this pump, at those times when you just need to be hands free. Maybe you're traveling, maybe you're at work, lots of different scenarios. And what I tell people is, if you're in a situation where you can't pull out that primary pump, then this would be a perfect option. A wearable like the Aura Glow would be a perfect option to complement for those times when you can't pull out your primary pump. And I do have lots of patients who kind of incorporate them from the beginning when they first introduce pumping. We tend to get a better result then than if we only use one type of pump and then try to add another pump later. Sometimes it's about getting your body to be sort of conditioned to respond. So maybe adding in that wearable, if you know you're going to need it, adding it in when you first start introducing pumping into your journey.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I could see it being something that, keeps people nursing their baby just because they may not have pumped otherwise. Like you were saying, you get into a situation where you can't pull out that pump. So you just push off that pumping session, which I know I did with my second baby at work. And then my milk supply suffered. But maybe if I had had something like this, I would have been like, oh, let me just do this real quick while I finish this work or whatever. And I always tell people, block it on your calendar. Like, don't make exceptions. Don't miss a pumping session. But of course, things come up and it can be hard sometimes. So I love that there's just more options out there.
Yes, some milk removal is always better than no milk removal. So it's like if we can only pump with a wearable, then by golly, let's get that wearable out. That's exactly what we need to do in that scenario. So yeah I love that encouragement that it might make things actually make that breastfeeding journey go a little bit further with the help of the tools that we have now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've loved everything that Motif has come out with. So I'm so excited for this new launch and to hear everyone's feedback from it. And I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me today about the new Aura Glow.
Yes, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
Thanks again to Kanaya for sharing her birth story and to Motif for sponsoring this episode. You can get all the information and links from today's episode by going to thebirthhour.com and just typing Kanaya's name into the search bar. I will also link to our childbirth course and Patreon group from the podcast app where you're listening to this episode.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.